Alright, so I decided to continue the theme from yesterday and just talk about what the difference between primary and secondary sources are really quick. And then I was encouraged by a friend to make kind of a summary of what I've talked about so far and what I intend to talk about going forward. Are you going to sit back down? They're on the dig about. Anyway, my hair is exciting today. It's been a rainy day, and my hair always gets exciting on a rainy day, but also I didn't comb it really well after I took my shower and went straight to bed. This is why I don't usually shower right before I go to bed. Chester, hi. Hold on. All right. Hi, what are we doing? Why are you... Oh my God, hold on. What is this going on? Too crazy. So give me a second. This won't be as long as last time. There's less to read. Anyway. Did you want me to move so you can... There, you can dig the dirt where I was sitting. Maybe that's what they wanted. Anyway. The ground is very muddy, but I'm sitting under a tree, so it's not actively like soaking wet. And I don't care about these shorts getting wet. Anyway. Oh, is it comfy boy? There he is. Settled in. Sleepy boy. Sleepy boy. We've had a sleepy day. Hi, Mommy. Don't stare people down. Honestly, I don't even know what she's looking at. So let me read this. I got a resource from the University of Texas. You can find so many resources. Just Google, what's the difference between primary and secondary, and in this case, tertiary sources, and you don't have to just trust my source, which is kind of the point I'm trying to make. Let me read what I've got. The University of Texas is a pretty good, well-respected university. Hold on. Why are you like this? We're having a day. Okay, anyway. Primary. A first-person account by someone who experienced or witnessed an event. The original document has not been previously published or interpreted by anybody else. First-person account of an event, first publication of a scientific study, the speech or the lecture, original artwork, handwritten manuscript, letters between two people, a diary, historical documents like the Bill of Rights. Those are all examples. So, it's first person is from a person who was there and created or directly witnessed the event, the thing in question. Okay. A secondary source is one step removed from the primary original source. The author is re-examining, interpreting, and forming conclusions based on information conveyed in the primary source. So, newspaper reporting on a scientific study would be an example. A review of a music CD or art show would be a secondary source. A biography, writing about a person. Those all would be secondary sources. So if you're reading an article reporting on something that happened using quotes from somebody who witnessed it, or using and interpreting the photographs taken or the art made or whatever, those are really good examples. That's secondary. And tertiary, further removed from a primary source, it leads the researcher to a secondary source rather than a primary source. Bibliography is an example. Do you know what a bibliography is? Look it up, bibliography. Index to articles and like a library catalog. And I would argue that anytime you go on and you click on like a tweet where somebody goes, this is what's happening, and they link an article, that would a tweet about an article about an event would be a tertiary source. TikTok, where somebody goes through a few different articles reviewing the events, but the TikToker is reviewing the articles of the events. Those are examples of tertiary. And the idea is kind of that the further removed So the primary versus secondary versus tertiary, the further removed you get, the less detail you're going to have, the less it's like this is kind of the expectation, but in reality there can be more detail, more information, as somebody who's going to do a newspaper article or an online article about an event will have collected a lot of primary sources and put them together to create a whole story. The problem with that too is that whoever is collecting the primary sources and putting them into an article or an essay or a TikTok video or whatever to analyze the event and provide evidence of it will be biased. We all are. We can only see the world from our limited mortal perspective. That the sources that they're going to choose and the way that they analyze the information, if they're not just giving you, it's like, here's just a list of quotes about a thing that happened and I'm going to give you no opinion about it, which is good reporting, can be good reporting. You're still gonna find bias in what sources they choose and how deep they go into their investigation, things like that. So it's not that one source is going to be better than the other. It's that you're going to need to expect different things. A primary source is very good when it comes to, you want, eyewitness accounts. You want people who attended the speeches to talk about the climate. How was the attitude of the people in the crowd? You want the speaker themselves to speak about to the speech itself. Sorry, she's so distracting. Just doing little somersaults all over the place. She's a little itchy. I think she does it when she's itchy. Anyway, you want the speech itself so that you can know exactly what was said to people. So if you can get a copy of the speech or if somebody recorded it, great. But primary sources can be limited in that they are going to have, that people can lie. I said this yesterday, people can lie, people can misrepresent information, people can just get things wrong. Eyewitness accounts of crimes, for example, have found to be very often inaccurate. People misremember things when interviewed with any kind of distance from the event. And so primary sources need to be, I like to say, triangulated. You need to have a few to corroborate the version of the event that one person might have seen. It's going to be completely I brought this up yesterday. A Republican at a Republican speech, a Republican event, is going to say that the climate was really positive and everybody was having a good time, versus a Democrat, maybe protesting on the side of a speech, whatever, is going to give a different summary, a different tone. And so it's really important to recognize that primary sources aren't like magically the best source. A secondary source analysis can be very good, very effective if they've tried to get multiple primary sources from multiple different perspectives and multiple whatever, blah, blah, blah. And a tertiary source tends to be, I'm going to say, more neutral, as in like you go to a library and you ask the librarian to point you in the direction of, let's just say, Hitler speeches. The librarian is not going to tell you their opinion about Hitler. They're just going to say, well, here is the shelf to find these books written by these authors. Here is a collection of articles and how to access them. It's going to tend to be more neutral, except I will say, again, the choosiness of the person who created that tertiary source needs to be considered. What sources did they not include? Like, for example, for a very long time in social science, it was dominated by white dudes. colonizers, and I mean white dudes, I mean Europeans, and white isn't a, white isn't really a category. It's more of an assimilation of characteristics used to. This is why when people get mad at being called white, it's like, yeah, but the society around you was created to give privileges to the white group, and people were added to the white group as they gained privileges. Like, look at the history of Irish people. Anyway, but this is a reality of my science, is that for a long time, the only people doing it were, and doing it like as in having the journals, having access to publications, having access to resources, stealing artifacts, taking them to their British museums, things like that. Well, it was a colonizer thing, and it you know, that concept that history was written by the victor, blah blah blah. It's mostly that history was suppressed by the colonizers and only interpreted to give a leg up, historically speaking, to the people that they wanted. So, for example, either inept or purposeful misinterpretation of artifacts or misunderstanding of bodies that were dug up. Like, for example, warrior women. A lot of warriors throughout history, throughout the existence of the species, a huge chunk of warriors have been female, born female, assigned female at birth, whatever. And for a long time, anytime a dude archaeologist or anthropologist would dig up a woman's grave and find artifacts of war, and they'd be buried in the same way as any other warrior, they'd be like, oh, this must have been a man. I'm not kidding. You can look this up. This is real. And it's kind of like with in Hitler's Germany, he had archaeologists, fake fucking social scientists on his goddamn payroll who went and planted false evidence, like would go and bury like pottery and shit and say, and then dig it up on camera and say, this, yeah, we'll get up in a second, I'm almost done. This is evidence that the ancient Germans were really fucking cool, and look how cool we are, and here's me digging it up right now, and to prove that our race is superior. Like, that happened. Okay, that literally happened. And it wasn't the only time that happened. It's not like Hitler came up with that idea on his own. He wasn't that smart. He really wasn't very smart. He was just a really aggressive speaker, and it worked on the people it needed to work on, and it did not work on the people that it did not work on. It's just violence worked on everybody else. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of a quick summary of primary versus secondary versus tertiary sources and why you need all of them. None are necessarily better than the others. It's more a matter of if you want to have accurate information about an event, you're going to want to look for all of these types, well, at least primary and secondary sources. You don't have to necessarily get into the tertiary sources unless you're really doing like a research paper or something. You really need collect a lot of information, but you need primary and secondary sources. You want to look at the ways that people are analyzing the primary sources. You want to get perspectives from across the board. You want to look at the people who are creating the primary versus the secondary source, understand their motives, do that primary source analysis thing that I told you last time, to get an idea of motives and context and all that kind of stuff. And you can apply that to the creators of secondary sources too, as in, what is the motive behind the person writing this article? What is the motive and perspective and the context behind somebody writing an article about revolutionary art, modern art, today. If somebody's doing an art review and saying all of this stuff is bullshit and none of it matters, versus somebody who goes into and says, and these artists have these meanings behind them, and this is what this painting means. This is what the banana duct tape to the wall means in context. There's gonna be difference in quality in analysis. So keep an eye on your secondary sources too. Anyway, so I'm gonna keep it short, like I said, and we're gonna go. These guys are ready to keep walking. You guys are cute babies. Yes, you are. Your best babies. There's a siren going on. Anyway, talk to you later. Tell me what you want me to talk about next.